It's really simple. You just need to protect your assets. If you operate in your individual name and someone sues you, they can get everything you own in your name. The two lines of defense, insurance. That second line is the entity. You may think that I'm online, nothing will ever happen. That's when it does.
Asset protection for crypto is very important. Set up an LLC to hold title to your cryptocurrency.
You have much better protection. The person suing only gets what's called a charging order. They're just sitting around waiting.
If you have a Wyoming LLC, they don't know that you're the owner.
California is the most expensive state, $800 per year, per entity, per LLC. She goes, oh no, that's too expensive. The next year, she came up to me and said, I'd like to start that LLC. I've been sued. And at that point, it's too late.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. Today I've got some special guests for you, Garrett and Ted Sutton, the father and son duo that are synonymous with legal protection for entrepreneurs and investors. They help people protect what they build. A little bit about Garrett. He's the founder and CEO of Corporate Direct. He's an award-winning author, and he's better known as the legal architect for the Rich Dad, Poor Dad empire. Ted is a partner at Corporate Direct and is in training to eventually take over the business. Ted is representing the next generation of business and legal protection. Garrett, let us know how all of this started, helping entrepreneurs protect what they build.
Priscilla, I went to law school in San Francisco, and my favorite course was on corporations and how to protect people. I just took to it. I always enjoyed it. And then it came time to move. I spent all my summers on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, and Nevada in the U.S. is the best state for asset protection. So I combined my love of corporate law with being in Nevada, which is great for corporations. And so it just all worked out that I focused on setting up and maintaining corporations and now LLCs to protect people. And then I became very fortunate to become associated with Robert Kiyosaki and travel the world with the Rich Dad Advisor team and Robert Kiyosaki. So it's just been really rewarding to be able to communicate to people in very simple terms. Too many people make it too complicated. It's really simple. You just need to protect your assets. And it's been enjoyable providing that information to people.
Ted, you grew up watching your father building this business, and clearly it was something that you also grew an affinity for. What would you say at the moment that you knew that was also for you?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was for me until after I graduated college. I grew up in Reno. Dad met my mom here, born and raised in Reno. Then I went to college at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And my degree there was actually mining engineering. Now, I was a big earth science nerd. I love geography. You see a picture of the Eastern Sierras behind me here. The summer before I graduated, I worked at a mine in northern Chile. It was in the Atacama Desert, driest place on earth, at this open pit copper mine. Now, I had a great time there. I thought the material was interesting. I thought a lot of the people were very down to earth and very friendly. But being there for 3 months made me realize that mining wasn't necessarily the career path I wanted to take. So I graduated college with a degree in mining engineering. I remember my parents sat down with me at a brunch and they said, look, Ted, you're not finding work, which I wasn't, and you don't necessarily like this. What you could do is you could just switch gears, go to law school, and take over the practice. And at that point, it was like an aha moment. It never occurred to me until after I graduated college. And so that's what ultimately led me to where I am. I took a year off. Then I went to the University of Wyoming for law school. I've been graduated for 3 years. And yeah, now I'm just working with him and eventually taking it over and pushing him out slowly but surely. So,
In a minute.
I love that. Oh, funny enough, I'm married to a mining engineer. That's why I'm here in Australia. A love for the rocks and things like that. But I get what you're saying, that mining is not really a US thing. Asset protection. Most people hear this and they switch off. It just sounds too complex. What it is and why it's important.
In the United States and other Commonwealth countries like Australia, we have a good common law that evolved to protect people and to protect their assets. And so in the United States and other countries, if you operate in your individual name and someone sues you, they can get everything you own in your name. And so the legal system provides us with corporations, limited companies, limited liability companies to protect ourselves. The government wants people to succeed in business, right? They don't want them to go out of business and be sued and lose everything. So the government allows for these protective structures to be put in place. Now, here in the US, they don't teach this in school. Unfortunately, they should be teaching certain legal topics, and Ted will get into it. He wrote a book for kids about legal topics that's coming out. They don't teach this, so you have to get it on your own. You have to learn this on your own. And Priscilla, unfortunately, too many people learn the hard way the first time, right? They operate their business in their individual name. They get sued. It's not a good thing. And then they realize that they should have operated through an LLC or a corporation. Hopefully people listening in right now where we're getting started in business should consider setting up that limited liability company right from the start. Even though it costs a little money, you want to protect yourself right from the start. And the other thing is when you're in business and you have a business card or whatever that says that you are a corporation or a limited company, people take you a little more seriously, right? Because you have taken steps to protect yourself. And that's what a good businessman does, is protect themselves through these entities.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Ted, tell us about the book that you have coming out and what led you to write that book for kids.
The book, it's going to be titled Greenback's Book of Law. The whole gist of the book is that it simplifies the law for kids. It's narrated by a dog whose owner's an attorney, and he goes into his law office every day and sits by a dog bed right next to his desk. So Greenback is a very knowledgeable dog, and he teaches the law and everything that the attorney knows through the story of the main character. I don't want to give too much away, but it simplifies the law for middle and high school kids because they're going to get out into the real world soon, and they're going to learn the hard way.
Or not at all.
Or not at all, which is something that actually happened to someone I know, that their actions have consequences. And there really isn't a resource out there that simplifies the law for kids in that age group. Unfortunately, the only people who know the law are people who went to law school. And I think that a lot of people out there should at least have a basic understanding of the legal system and how it applies. Now, getting back to the question you asked about my inspiration, I think it's just a combination of both my dad and Robert Kiyosaki. My dad's written a bunch of books about business law. I mean, he has some of them here. I'm going to hold it up for him.
Good.
Just because
you got to hold the book up.
So one of them is Loopholes of Real Estate. Loopholes of Real Estate, Start Your Own Corporation, Finance Your Own Business. So he's written a lot of books on his own. And so since I'm going into this, I wanted to have a book of my own. I was also inspired by Robert Kiyosaki. I distilled why Rich Dad Poor Dad sold so well. And the reason there is that knowledge about financial education was only available to wealthy people. It was not available to the general public. And so Robert's story about having a rich dad and a poor dad, teaching the concepts of financial education to the masses, he sold 30 million copies. And so I figured after going to law school, taking the bar exams, I realized that most people don't know the law. And I think that at minimum, they should have a basic understanding of that. So it's just a combination of my dad's writing prowess with sort of the utility of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and morphing that into my own experience is how it all came to be.
But there's one other thing, Priscilla. So the way to learn is through games. And so you read the book, Greenback's Book of Law, and then there's a card game where the kids can play a game to really cement the knowledge that they found in the book. And that's what Robert Kiyosaki always teaches, that you learn through games. And
right.
So this will be valuable for the younger kids. I have to say that Ted's first time to Australia was when we were on a Rich Dad event with Robert Kiyosaki. We were in Sydney and Melbourne?
Yep. And then we went to Brisbane and Cairns the second time. So
So-
we've been kind of all over. Haven't been to Perth yet.
Yeah, you'd love Perth.
I know. Get lots of mining activity there too. I know they have that super pit out in Kalgoorlie, I believe. We're very fond of Australia, but Rich Dad Poor Dad led to playing cash flows like a prerequisite to that. Greenback's Book of Law will be like a prerequisite to playing Greenback's card game. So it's just a way to learn and cement knowledge and eventually help people moving forward.
That's a great concept. I like that you drew those parallels because, like you said, Rich Dad Poor Dad was the book for the person who doesn't have a rich dad, rich uncle, rich whatever. It was like the pulling back of the veil into a world that you didn't know about. And all of a sudden you had access to knowing how this world worked at the price of a book. So
Good
Right.
point.
I love that.
Yeah, Greenback can be something for people who don't have a lawyer in the family or don't even know a lawyer at all. There's so many people out there who just don't know an attorney, and having that knowledge through Greenback can be really helpful.
Definitely. There's so many things we do, buying houses, everyday things, but we don't know enough about what we're getting into. So I'm excited for that Greenback. Garrett, your book, Start Your Own Corporation, has been a modern classic. And we've just talked about it a little bit about why people should have the correct structure and not go in as their name. And I'm thinking of the person who is running an online business on their computer and thinking, I'm just an online entrepreneur. How does asset protection come into the play with what I'm doing?
Sure. No matter what business you're in, Priscilla, there is risk. You may think that I'm online, no one knows who I am, but if you sell a product that causes damage, you're in the line of the litigation. So a lot of people who are reselling products, the first thing you want to do is see if the person that you're taking the product from has insurance, right? You want to make sure they have product liability insurance and then can list you as an additional insurer. Because if you sell the product to the end user and they get hurt, you're going to be sued. Product liability insurance is important, but at the same time, you want that entity. You want that limited liability entity protecting you. Even though you may think nothing will ever happen, that's when it does. You want to have that entity protecting you. You want to have a bank account in the name of the entity. You want all your contracts, all your online sales to be through the company name. And you want to make sure you follow all the formalities that keep you protected because you never know what can happen. We always talk about the two lines of defense. The first line of defense is insurance. You're always going to have insurance. If you operate a business, you want to have fire insurance and casualty insurance on your building. You want to have insurance against claims, cyber liability claims coming against you. But that second line of defense is the entity. The corporation, the limited company, whatever you set up, you want that second line of defense because insurance won't always cover you. If you get sued in your individual name, they have a claim against you and all your personal assets, you can try and go bankrupt. Some claims you can't discharge in bankruptcy. And so you'd rather have that claim be against the limited company than against you individually. I will tell you that spouses don't like it when you get sued and are personally responsible for everything. So just think of your spouse. You're doing this to protect him or her from any future liability.
That's so good. I thought about the people running a business behind a personal brand, behind a name. And I like that you talked about cybersecurity, which is a really big deal now as we're going forward. I'm interested, Ted, are we at the point where we can call cryptocurrency and things that are digital in nature forms of building wealth? What do you think about that?
That's a great question. I think we're getting pretty close there. I view cryptocurrency like I view commodities, just because a lot of them have some sort of store of value. It's not like a stock where it's tied to a company that makes a product, but I think when it comes to some cryptos like Bitcoin and Litecoin, where there's a finite amount of cryptocurrencies that are going to be created, like Bitcoin, there's only ever going to be 21 million. And so because of that, it creates a scarcity factor. And with that, we've seen the price of Bitcoin go up over time. I know it's stagnated recently. So if it's used as a store of value for some cryptocurrencies, not all. I don't know if you want to go binge buy Dogecoin or whatever else, or any sort of random coin where they can make as many of them as they can. But I think for the ones where there's a finite amount of them and that they've proven to appreciate in value over time, I think it could be a good asset to invest in for that one purpose. However, I'm not the type of guy who's going to put all my eggs in one basket. So I think it helps to have some of it, but also to diversify as well.
Now, if we're terming it an asset, in terms of the coins you've said have limited number, if we're terming it an asset, I'm interested to know, what are we looking at as we go forward in terms of asset protection?
Another great question. So when you set up an account to trade cryptocurrency, we recommend setting up an LLC first. And the reason being is that LLC will hold title to your cryptocurrency, much like it would with a brokerage account with Schwab or Fidelity or any other trading platform that you use in Australia. So what you'd do is you'd set up an LLC to hold title to your cryptocurrency. Then when you go to a crypto exchange like crypto.com or Kraken or any others out there, you'd set up a business account for your crypto, and the title to that would be in your LLC. And then I think as a second line of defense, there's something like $2 billion a year in crypto that gets lost every year. So potentially a second line of defense there could be having an insurance policy that protects against any sort of crypto losses if they happen. So I think asset protection for crypto is very important. Having your LLC first and then potentially an insurance policy as a secondary backup could be helpful going forward.
Hey, small business family, quick pause here. If you've been listening and thinking, I need help getting clear on my message and how to actually market this amazing thing I've created, I've made something just for you. It's called the Clarity Intensive, and it's 2 focused sessions, one-on-one, where we untangle your ideas, map out your next best move, and build a foundation for real business momentum. If you're done thinking what's the right thing to do, and you're ready for a customized strategy that fits you, this is for you. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can visit the website www.reinventingperspectives.com/shop, and you'll see our Clarity Intensive 1-to-1 marketing coaching. Let's get back to the show.
And Priscilla, people think that crypto is confidential and whatever, but if you get sued and you're called into court on a debtor's exam where someone has sued you, they have a judgment against you, they can haul you into court and ask you questions, and you're in front of a judge and you got to tell the truth. And you would have to tell the truth that I have a crypto account in my individual name, and the court could award the victim that amount of cryptocurrency. By having it in an LLC, you have much better protection. The person suing only gets what's called a charging order, which is a lien on distributions, meaning if you decide to pull the money out of the wallet in the name of the LLC, if you decide to pull the money out, it goes to the car wreck victim, but you may not take any money out. So they're just sitting around waiting, and it's just not a good position for an attorney who's on a contingency. They get a third or 40% of what the car wreck victim gets. They don't want to sit around and wait. They want to go for the next case that has insurance that they can easily get. So setting up a LLC for your crypto is really good. We have a lot of clients that are doing that now. And like Ted said, it's just like a brokerage account. If you have 100 shares of Ford and General Motors at Charles Schwab, you want that in an LLC. And the same with Bitcoin. If you have a decent Bitcoin account, you want that to be held by an LLC for the asset protection.
Thank you for that. A lot of times we think the technology itself around digital currencies and the blockchain, we think it means that we no longer need to do all the other things because it's digital. So I'm glad you spoke to that. Now, I wanted to ask you about this. You talked about protecting entrepreneurs and their privacy. What do you mean by privacy? Because I'm thinking most of the times we expose everything online. The way we do business now with the personal brand, and we know the children, we know the children's names, we know things we don't need to know, we know where they went. So if you can speak to that.
Do you want to cover Wyoming privacy?
Yeah, so when it comes to your personal brand and the business that you run, obviously people are going to know it's you. But where privacy comes into play is when you have assets and you hold title to them through your LLCs. So that's where if you have a Wyoming LLC, you use it to trade stocks or crypto, or you use it as a holding company where you have subsidiary LLCs beneath it, which hold title to rental properties, for instance. So the nice thing about privacy there is that when you set up an LLC in Wyoming, your name is not listed on the Wyoming Secretary of State's website. So for the rental property example, if you have a subsidiary LLC in one state, tenant trips and falls, sues that one LLC. They'll see that it's owned by a Wyoming LLC. Then when they go to the Wyoming Secretary of State's website, they're not going to find your name. Now, if they were to sue the Wyoming LLC, they would sue the registered agent address, and usually that's us. We would turn around and notify you. But it gives you an additional layer of protection just because if you have assets, you own them. If you have a Wyoming LLC, they don't know that you're the owner.
So, Priscilla, back to your point, when people are starting out and they want the world to know that they're the brand, that they're the company, that they're the influencer, that's fine. You just want to have that company protecting you. So, if you're going to be out there as the major influencer, people are going to know who you are. They're going to assume you own the company. But in that scenario, the company will protect you.
It makes a lot of sense. You talked about the structures of the holding company, the subsidiary companies, and to someone thinking, at what point am I getting a complicated structure, or at what point do I need to engage more than me just having an LLC, and when do I need something that is more strategic?
We can offer free 15-minute consultation with an incorporating specialist, so you can talk to someone in our office. And over the years, we've represented a number of Australians who have bought real estate in the U.S. There was a surge of Australian investment into the U.S. maybe 15 years ago, and we represented a lot of them. And it's just putting together a team. It's really a team effort. People will know that maybe they need an LLC for their first activity, but then when it comes to holding companies and separating assets from each other, I always recommend that you talk to a professional and see what they say, because you don't have the time to learn the law, right? Spend 15 or 30 minutes with someone who knows it, and you're good at what you do. You go out and do your business. You grow your business, and you have a team, a CPA, a chartered accountant, a lawyer that can help you with the structuring. A banker is a good member of your team. And as Robert Kiyosaki says, investing and entrepreneurship are team sports. You want to put together the best team that can help you get to where you want to go.
There's the gold nugget there for entrepreneurs who are listening, that don't try and do everything. Do what you're good at and assemble the best team that you can to help you protect your wealth and help you build your wealth in the right way. Now, I know that there's a new law, and Ted, you've been a part of this process that people might not have heard of or have, the Corporate Transparency Act. Maybe you can tell us in simple terms, what is this about and who does it apply to?
Yeah, so what the Corporate Transparency Act is, it was a new law that requires companies in the U.S. to report information to the federal government. So it's interesting because corporate law has always been a creature of state law in the U.S., but this is the first law of its kind to require corporations and LLCs to report information to the federal government. Since Trump took over, it's been on hold, which I think is good because I think the law is very ineffective. But they did limit it in scope to where if you have a foreign company that's registered to do business in the U.S., you're still required to report information about that company to the Department of Treasury. So if you have an Australia entity, for example, and you register it to do business in the U.S., the Corporate Transparency Act would apply to you. But another thing is that other states have followed suit, and they've effectively copied and pasted the Corporate Transparency Act onto their own books. New York is the first state to copy and paste it. They have a new law called the New York LLC Transparency Act, and it requires LLC owners in New York to report information to the New York Department of State. It takes effect January 1st of 2026, and we started to gear up for it for all the New York LLCs that we have under our management. A lot's changed over the past 2 years. The Corporate Transparency Act's on hold, but other states, the dominoes are starting to fall where they're going to mimic the Corporate Transparency Act, and people are going to have to report information to the state government. So lots unfolding. We're staying on top of it, and we're going to inform everyone about these new laws that are coming up.
Priscilla, if you have an Australian company that comes to the United States, they have to file with the federal government. And then if they're going to operate in the state of New York, they also have to file with the state of New York. Stay out of New York. No, it's a good state, but there are these extra filing requirements if you're an Australian coming into the United States. Now, what do we charge to do the CTA filing? It's just
The federal's $250.
yeah. So it's not that big a burden. It's just that you're providing the federal government in its giant database some sensitive information. And that's why Trump and his cabinet said, we're going to put this on hold. This is a lot. And there were a lot of people in the country that didn't like it. They felt it was an invasion of privacy, that you had to give all this confidential information to the government. So it's somewhat of a controversial law that we have, but New York has gone forward and said, we're still going to collect this information.
I'm interested, Garrett, if you can just share some stories so people can put information together with, okay, what is the effect of having this or not having this?
One story I like to tell, Priscilla, is I was doing a Rich Dad event in San Francisco, and this lady came up to me, and she had a duplex in San Francisco, a 2-unit apartment building, and she had it in her individual name. And I said, you would be better protected with an LLC on title. You got to make sure that the LLC is on title to the property for the protection. And I said, you're in California, and California is the most expensive state to set up an LLC, and which is, you have to pay the state of California $800 per year, per entity, per LLC. And so I explained this to her, and she goes, oh, no, that's too expensive. I can't do it. So I was at another Rich Dad event, Priscilla, the next year, and she came up to me and said, I'd like to start that LLC. I've been sued. And at that point, it's too late. When you were sued, the title was in your individual name. It's too late, at least for that claim that came against her, to protect yourself. You've got to set these things up right at the start. And you may think nothing will happen to me. And as I said, that's when it does. And so you really want to set these up at the start, because once you've been sued, it's too late to protect yourself. It's like Robert Kiyosaki says, you don't put on the seatbelt after the car wreck. You've got to do it proactively.
Thank you for that. Ted, I'm interested to know if you have a story that the audience could put the links together.
Yeah. So in my short legal experience, I've dealt with other attorneys who have set up an LLC on behalf of their friends or clients. I do know someone who they use LegalZoom to get their entity set up, and they had no idea what they were doing. They didn't have anyone to guide them through the setup process. They just picked a random LLC package, and it ended up costing his client dearly because they chose the wrong form of taxation. And with that, they were overpaying thousands of dollars in taxes. So I've seen that. I've seen people just think that cutting corners is going to be the best choice for them, but in the end, ends up costing them more. At the end of the day, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You may as well pay the upfront costs of preventing any problems down the road by setting it up with someone who actually knows what they're doing. And so I think, especially when you're younger, costs can be a high bar to clear, but at the end of the day, it's so important to do it right and just to pay the money up front to have someone help you through it correctly. So I've seen that. Plays on my dad's point. It's really important to have a team of people around you who know what they're doing and who can help you avoid any problems in the future.
Very true. Now, I know you've got a financial education channel, Tenero Official, on YouTube. What is the mission? What is the goal with that channel?
Well, Tenero is a combination of tener, to have, and dinero, money. So we combine tener dinero to Tenero, to have money. And the idea is that it's a financial channel for adults and kids. We have kids shows on there as well. We want to teach the kids about financial education. It's on YouTube. We have some videos with Robert Kiyosaki and some of the advisors, and it's just good, accessible information. And as I've traveled around the world, and Ted's been on some of these trips with me, there's just this thirst for education on financial matters. And so that's what we're aiming for, is to provide parents and kids with great financial information, because again, they just aren't teaching it in schools.
So good. I'd just like to close with a little rapid round. Garrett, the biggest misconception about LLCs is
They're
you
too
can finish the
expensive.
sentence. Ted, if you only did one thing this year to protect your business, this is to the new founder, to the new entrepreneur, make it doing what?
Setting up a separate bank account for your business.
A lawsuit-proof entrepreneur or entrepreneurs concerned about lawsuit does what differently?
No one's completely lawsuit proof. We can't make that promise, but someone who has structured their affairs properly does sleep better at night.
Ted, the wisest thing that Robert Kiyosaki ever told me was?
Ooh, I would say surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, because you have two ears and one mouth, and it's important to use each proportionately. One of the things Robert does is he actually does listen a lot to other people, which I find very interesting.
So good. Now, to the audience, if you're listening and you're ready to take your business seriously, start by protecting it. And you can find Garrett and Ted at corporatedirect.com and their YouTube channel, Tenero Official, which is a financial education channel. And I think if you listen to today's conversation, I think there's a lot that you shared. Thank you very much, Garrett and Ted. I'd like to know, personally, professionally, as you look out into the market, what's exciting for you?
What's exciting for me is just the Tenero Official, being able to make these movies. We're doing some in Africa. We're doing some around the world. So we want to bring the world into this idea of financial education. That's what's exciting me.
Yeah,
Ted?
for me, I would say probably the accessibility to invest. I think we've seen that with Robinhood coming into the forefront 10 years ago or whenever it started. People can invest in like fractional shares of real estate, and then also you can invest in cryptocurrency where it's a lower barrier to entry. So I think that's pretty exciting. I think there's going to be more options at people's disposal. Combine that with the hunger for financial knowledge that we're trying to do with Tenero. I think the future looks bright in that regard.
Thank you so much. Please, to the audience that's listening, go to corporatedirect.com, and there's so much that you can read about what Garrett has done. He's got so many books. I think that you can get a lot of information. And as you can see from this conversation, you need to protect your business. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Priscilla.
Thanks,
Thanks for having
Priscilla.
us.